I had just finished folding the last of Robert's tiny pajamas when I heard the unmistakable sound of voices in the hallway. Not just any voices, their voices. My heart dropped. I walked into the living room and found my husband, Ryan, standing by the front door with a smug look. Right behind him stood his parents, Margot and Dennis, suitcases in hand, smiling like they owned the place. "Surprise," Ryan said, as if he'd brought home a bouquet instead of two people who made my skin crawl. I stared at them, frozen. "What is this?" "They'll be staying with us for a while," he said casually, brushing past me. "Just temporary." Temporary. That word rang in my ears like a warning bell. This wasn't a hotel. This was my home. My grandparents had passed it down to me, and every corner of it held a memory that belonged to my side of the family. Ryan knew that. Still, he hadn't asked. Not once. "Ryan," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking, "you moved your parents in without even talking to me?" He shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "I figured it wouldn't be a big deal. It's just for a while. And let's be honest, you wouldn't have said yes anyway." I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled politely and turned to Margot and Dennis, who were already making themselves at home. Margot dropped her designer handbag on my antique coffee table, the one my grandfather built with his own hands. Dennis was already loosening his shoes and eyeing the recliner like it was his throne. "Hello, Ava," Margot said, barely glancing at me. "This place could use some updates. Still has that old lady vibe, doesn't it?" I bit the inside of my cheek. Hard. It wasn't like this was the first time I'd felt like an outsider in my own home. Ever since I married Ryan 5 years ago, his parents had made it clear they didn't think I was good enough. I was just a stay-at-home mom to them. My days filled with baby food, nap times, and laundry didn't count as real work. I remembered every subtle dig Margot had made over the years. How Robert didn't speak enough, how I wasn't firm enough with him, how I let myself go after becoming a mom. They had a way of making their judgment sound like advice, but I knew better. I looked down the hallway where Robert's giggles echoed from his room. I couldn't let him see me unravel. He was the reason I stayed calm. The reason I kept breathing through the panic building in my chest. Later that evening, I walked into the kitchen to find Margot rearranging the pantry. She had taken down all my labeled containers, removed the spice racks, and was replacing them with her cluttered style. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my tone even. "Oh, this system was impossible to follow," she replied breezily. "You'll thank me later. I've been organizing kitchens for decades, sweetie." I stood there, stunned. My pantry wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Just like this house was mine. But every inch they touched felt like a piece of me being erased. Dennis walked in then, chuckling. "Margot always fixes things, doesn't she?" he said. "Bet Ryan's glad to have his real home back." Real home. The word stung more than I expected. That night, after Robert fell asleep, I sat at the edge of our bed with tears silently slipping down my cheeks. Ryan was in the bathroom, brushing his teeth like nothing had happened. Like our home hadn't just been taken over. When he came out, I asked quietly, "Do you even care how this makes me feel?" He looked at me for a second, then climbed into bed. "You're overreacting, Ava. It's just temporary. Can we not fight about everything?" I turned off the lamp, lying still in the darkness. My fingers curled into the blanket as I stared at the ceiling, feeling small and invisible in my own home. My voice might have been quiet, but inside, a storm was brewing. The next few days were like living under surveillance. Everywhere I turned, Margot was there, hovering, judging, inserting herself into moments that were never meant for her. It started with the cereal. I had just poured Robert's favorite oat squares into his bowl when she clicked her tongue behind me. "You're still feeding him this processed junk," she said, plucking the box from the counter. "Have you read the sugar content? Honestly, Ava, no wonder he's so hyper." Robert looked up at me with wide eyes, spoon halfway to his mouth. I forced a smile and kissed the top of his head, gently turning him back to his breakfast. Inside, my jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. Later that evening, I walked into Robert's room, expecting to find him snuggled under the covers, waiting for our usual bedtime story. Instead, Margot sat beside him, flipping through Goodnight Moon, her voice exaggerated and dramatic, like she was auditioning for some twisted family play. "Margot," I said quietly, "bedtime is something Robert and I do together. He's used to our routine." She didn't even look up. "Well, maybe it's time for something different. Children thrive on variety, you know." Robert blinked at me, confused. My heart dropped. He was already too young to understand why his bedtime suddenly felt like someone else's performance. I waited until she left the room to tuck him in properly, brushing back his curls and whispering, "I'm still here, sweetheart. I'm always here." But the worst was the way she looked at me. Like I was a guest in my own life. She'd glide through the hallway in her silky robe, sipping tea from my favorite mug, offering passive-aggressive comments like candy. "So, what do you do all day, really?" she asked once, seated in the living room she'd rearranged without permission. "I mean, other than, being a mom. Must be nice not having any real deadlines." I wanted to scream. Ryan sat right there on the couch, scrolling through his phone. I looked at him, silently begging for him to say something. Anything. He didn't. Later, when I confronted him, he sighed dramatically. "Can you stop making everything a crisis, Ava?" he said. "My mom means well. You just blow things out of proportion." "She's undermining me, Ryan," I snapped. "In front of our son. In my own home." He shook his head. "It's our home. And since you want to get technical, maybe remember, I pay the bills around here." I stood there, stunned. I'd heard every word, but the sting was in what he didn't say. He didn't defend me. Didn't set a boundary. He just let her keep crawling deeper into our lives. And then it happened. I was putting away laundry in Robert's room when I caught Margot standing over his dresser, rummaging through his drawers. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She turned, completely unfazed. "Looking for a better pair of pajamas. The ones you put him in are too thin. Poor thing will catch a cold." I stepped forward, placing myself between her and the dresser. "You don't get to go through his things without asking." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "Don't act like I need your permission. Ryan's my son. This is his house too, and by extension it's mine. You're just, what? Managing it." Something inside me snapped. "No," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "This house is mine. Legally and emotionally. My grandparents left it to me. You don't live here. You're a guest and you've overstayed." She folded her arms. "If you want me gone, talk to Ryan." I walked out before I did something I'd regret. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone and dialed the only person who could still make me feel grounded, my brother Joseph. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, what's up?" And I broke. My voice cracked as I poured out everything, the cereal, the bedtime invasion, the gaslighting, the violation of Robert's space. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. Finally, he said, "Ava, this isn't just about them being rude. It's about them stealing your peace. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. This is your home, your son, your life. You've been more than patient. It's time to remind them who you are." Tears streamed down my face. For the first time in days, I didn't feel like I was drowning. After the call, I sat down at the kitchen table with a pen and a notepad. I wrote down everything she'd done since the day they walked in uninvited. Every boundary crossed, every insult, every moment of disrespect. The list filled 2 pages. I stared at it for a long time. Then I folded it in half and placed it on the counter. Tomorrow, I would read every word of it aloud if I had to. This house was mine, and I was done being quiet in it. The next morning, I woke before the sun. My chest felt tight, but not from panic. It was focused. I had a plan. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was just surviving in my own home. Robert was still asleep. I brewed coffee quietly and sat by the window with the folded list in my lap, reading it one last time. Every item was a wound-eyed bandaged with silence. But that silence had turned into permission, and I wasn't giving it anymore. Around 9, I found Ryan in the living room, scrolling his phone like always. Margot and Dennis were chatting at the dining table, voices full of their usual entitled ease. "Can we all sit for a moment?" I asked, steady and calm. Margot looked annoyed but followed Ryan to the couch. I stood in front of them, hands by my sides, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. "I need to talk. And I need you to listen without interrupting," I said. Ryan looked up. "Ava, what's going on?" I unfolded the paper. "I'm going to read something. After that, you'll understand what comes next." Margot smirked, but I ignored it. I began listing every violation. The serial comments. Hijacking bedtime. Rearranging my pantry. Going through Robert's drawers. The disrespect, the dismissiveness, the constant erosion of my role in my own home. My voice didn't rise. I didn't cry. I read it like a testimony. When I finished, I folded the paper again and looked directly at them. "This is my home. You moved in without asking, and you've treated me like a guest in a space that belonged to me long before either of you walked through that door." Margot opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. "No. I'm not done. This ends today. Either the two of you pack your things and leave, or Robert and I will. And I'll make sure a lawyer explains exactly why this house won't be yours to return to." Ryan sat back, stunned. "Ava, come on. Isn't this a little extreme?" "No," I said flatly. "What's extreme is letting this go on for weeks. What's extreme is how you've watched them walk all over me and said nothing." Dennis finally stood up. "This is absurd. You're acting like we're criminals." "I'm acting like a mother protecting her child's peace. If that makes you uncomfortable, so be it." Margot stood too, eyes flashing. "You ungrateful brat. We came here to help, and you've done nothing but sulk. No wonder Ryan doesn't defend you. You're a miserable little martyr." I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just pointed to the front door. "You need to leave." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Ryan sighed and looked down at his hands. "Maybe it's best," he mumbled. "Just give her space." That was the moment I knew something in our marriage had cracked wide open. Margot stormed into the hallway, muttering insults as she shoved things into her suitcase. Dennis followed, grumbling about how they'd never been treated like this before. I stood by the front door as they passed, silent. Margot turned one last time. "You'll regret this." "I doubt it," I replied, and gently shut the door behind them. The silence that followed was strange. For the first time in weeks, the house didn't feel like it was swallowing me. It felt like mine again. I went to Robert's room, sat beside him while he napped, and just breathed. I didn't realize how heavy everything had felt until it was finally gone. But peace didn't last long. Over the next 2 days, Ryan grew cold. He wasn't outright cruel, but distant in a way that felt pointed. He avoided eye contact, barely spoke, ate dinner in silence. Then he dropped it over coffee one morning. "I'm going to Boston for a few weeks. There's a project I need to supervise." I didn't ask questions, didn't beg. I just nodded. "All right. Safe travels." He looked surprised. Maybe he expected a fight, but I didn't have one left in me. Whatever this was between us, whatever it had become, I was done carrying it alone. The morning after he left, I started cleaning. Not just straightening up, but deep, cleansing work. I scrubbed baseboards, rearranged furniture, and washed curtains. I was reclaiming every inch of this place, piece by piece. Then I saw his laptop open on the kitchen counter. I hesitated, but something told me to look. The inbox was open, and right at the top was a message labeled, "Can't wait to see you again. Same hotel?" I clicked. It wasn't just one message. It was dozens. Over months. Different locations. Photos. Reservations. Confessions. My breath caught. I felt the floor tilt under me. All the distance, all the deflection. It made sense now. Ryan hadn't just let his mother walk over me. He'd been betraying me long before she even stepped through the door. I stared at the screen, frozen. Then I closed the laptop, wiped my hands on my jeans, and stood still in the kitchen, surrounded by the sound of my heartbeat. This house was mine. My son was mine. But the man I had built a life with? He had never been. I didn't cry that night. I thought I might, but I didn't. I lay in bed with the covers pulled up to my chest, listening to the soft rhythm of Robert's breathing through the baby monitor on the nightstand. The laptop was closed. The images and words from Ryan's emails still burned in my mind, but the tears never came. I felt hollow. Not broken, just emptied. And underneath that emptiness was something steadier, resolve. The next morning, while Robert was still finishing his pancakes, I made the first call. A lawyer named Michelle Phelps, recommended by my friend Laura years ago, picked up after 2 rings. I explained everything briefly. Ownership of the house, Ryan's prolonged absences, the infidelity. Her voice was calm, matter of fact. Do you have documented proof of the affair? Yes, I replied. Emails, dates, hotel confirmations. Good. I'll send over a secure link. Upload everything. We'll start drafting the divorce papers. Just like that, the first brick in the wall came down. I didn't tell Ryan. Not yet. He'd left for his Boston trip without looking back, and I wanted it to stay that way while I handled what needed to be done. Quietly, safely, strategically. I called a real estate agent next and listed the house. It hurt, selling what my grandparents had given me, but the pain felt cleaner than staying. I needed a fresh space. Somewhere, Robert and I could rebuild without the shadows of betrayal tucked into every corner. By midweek, I had boxed up Ryan's belongings and placed them in the garage. I left a short note taped to the boxes. Please arrange for pickup. No need to come inside. Then I sat in Robert's room and watched him build towers from wooden blocks, giggling to himself. His world was still soft, untouched. And I intended to keep it that way. When he went down for his nap, I called my brother Joseph again. The moment he answered, I let out a slow breath and finally spoke the truth. I'm divorcing him. He was quiet for a second, then said, Good. That one word wrapped around me like a blanket. I listed the house. I added, I'm going to start over. For Robert. For me. Whatever you need, he said without hesitation. We're behind you. Mom, Dad, everyone. I'll come help you pack when the time comes. After that call, something in me shifted. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing, clearing, restoring. I started repainting the living room, choosing a soft sage green that reminded me of spring mornings. I pulled down Margot's tacky drapes and replaced them with light, airy ones I found at a local boutique. I donated the things she'd left behind, pillows, trinkets, even her tea set, and threw away the mug she'd claimed as hers. Every change was small, but each one made the house feel more like mine again. Not the old version, but a new chapter. One I was writing, line by line. When the legal documents arrived for signature, I reviewed them carefully. Michelle had included everything: custody arrangements, child support, and my full claim on the property value. I signed each page with a calm hand. I hadn't spoken to Ryan since he left, and I didn't plan to until the papers were ready to be served. There was nothing left to discuss. Nothing I wanted to hear. His absence no longer felt like abandonment. It felt like permission. At night, I sat on the porch with a cup of chamomile tea, watching the stars and letting the silence settle in. It wasn't lonely anymore. It was peaceful. And peace was something I hadn't had in a long time. Robert began sleeping better, too. He didn't wake up crying for me in the middle of the night. His mood improved. He laughed more, ran through the hallways again. Whatever heaviness had been hanging over our home had lifted. One evening, while folding his tiny socks, I whispered a promise to him. No one will ever come into this house again and make you feel small, or confused, or like you don't belong. I said it for him, but I meant it for both of us. I wasn't that frightened, a silenced version of myself anymore. I was his mother, the protector of our peace, the writer of our new story. And I would never let anyone take that from us again. Ryan walked through the door 2 weeks later like nothing had changed, rolling his suitcase behind him and glancing around with a casual smirk. But the house didn't look the way he'd left it. Gone were Margot's heavy curtains. The living room had been painted a soft sage green. The gallery wall of outdated portraits had been replaced with watercolor prints that Robert and I had painted together. Even the scent in the air had shifted. No more sandalwood candles that Ryan preferred. Just lavender and clean linen. Mine. He blinked slowly, taking it in. You redecorated? I stood at the edge of the hallway, calm, steady.
No.
I reclaimed. He frowned, confused. Where's my stuff? In the garage, I said simply. The house is sold. The closing is in 10 days. He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. You sold a house? I did. You can't just sell it behind my back. I didn't. The title's in my name. I had every right. He stepped closer, a scoff escaping his lips. You're overreacting. Whatever this is about, we can talk through it. You've always been emotional. I reached behind me and handed him a sealed envelope. He opened it slowly, his smirk fading as he flipped through the divorce papers. I spoke before he could respond. I know about the affair, Ryan. I saw the emails. All of them. His mouth opened, but no words came. Then, classically, he tried the oldest trick he had. You misunderstood. Those those were from a long time ago. We weren't doing well back then. I let the silence stretch between us, letting him flail. I was lonely, he added weakly. And she meant nothing. I tilted my head. You booked hotel rooms across 5 cities and carried on for months. That's not a mistake. That's a decision. He laughed bitterly, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're going through with this? I already have. He stared at me for a long time, then nodded slowly and walked toward the garage. He didn't slam the door. He didn't yell. But I could feel the weight of his arrogance collapsing under the reality he hadn't expected me, standing on my own. The court date came 2 weeks later. Ryan arrived in a navy blue suit, still holding onto the illusion that charm might save him. It didn't. The judge reviewed the financials, the custody request, and the evidence of infidelity. My lawyer spoke, professionally, presenting every detail I had given her. Ryan's lawyer tried to twist the narrative, implying I was vindictive or impulsive. But the truth was clean and simple. By the end of the session, I was granted full physical custody of Robert. Ryan was given scheduled visitation, but I held final say in anything concerning our son's education, health, and residence. Ryan tried to approach me in the hallway afterward. I made mistakes, he said, softer than usual. I got caught up in the pressure in work and family. I didn't mean to hurt you. I looked at him, truly seeing him, not as my husband, not even as Robert's father in that moment. Just a man who had underestimated everything I had carried, sacrificed, and rebuilt. I'm not angry anymore, I said honestly. But I'm not yours to apologize to either. His eyes dropped, and he nodded. I guess I deserve that. You deserve what you built. He walked away without another word. News spread fast in our town. Margot and Dennis, once the darlings of every charity gala and country club dinner, became the center of uncomfortable whispers. People knew, not just about the affair, but about how they'd moved into their daughter-in-law's house, insulted her, undermined her, and got kicked out with nothing but suitcases and sour faces. Their invitations dried up. Their smiles lost their grip. And I didn't feel even a flicker of sympathy. I wasn't watching for revenge. I was simply done watching them at all. Every ounce of energy I had was now poured into Robert's world. His laughter as we made pancakes on Sunday mornings. His sleepy eyes as I read his favorite bedtime story. Just the two of us, uninterrupted. His tiny hand wrapped around mine as we walked through our new neighborhood. I had fought for this life. I had bled and ached for it. And now I have it. Not the one I had dreamed of with Ryan, but one far better. One I had built by finally choosing myself. The morning the house officially sold, I didn't cry. I thought I might. Standing in the living room one last time with sunlight slanting across the wooden floors my grandfather had refinished himself. But instead of tears, I felt stillness.
Peace.
Closure. I left the keys on the counter, took Robert's hand, and walked out with only the things that mattered. We moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment above my family's coffee shop, Sunrise Brew. My parents had opened it nearly 30 years ago, and I'd grown up behind the counter, watching my mom swirl hearts into cappuccinos, hearing my dad laugh with the regulars before sunrise. When they retired and offered me the keys, I said yes, without hesitation. I poured every ounce of myself into it. Early mornings became my rhythm. I'd wake before Robert, tie on my apron, and head downstairs while my best friend Kelly helped with school drop-off. We redesigned the menu, added cozy reading corners, and partnered with local artists for wall displays. Slowly, the shop blossomed, not just as a business, but as a heartbeat of the neighborhood. People started coming not just for the coffee, but for the warmth, the music, the quiet sense that this place had been built with care and purpose. And in a way, they were right. Every latte I poured, every display I set up, was part of me stitching something back together. I didn't think much about Ryan until he showed up one rainy afternoon, 3 months after the divorce had finalized. He looked different, tired, less put together. The suit was still there, but the confidence was gone. He stood at the counter, hands tucked into his coat pockets like a schoolboy. "Can we talk?" he asked. I nodded and led him to a quiet table by the window. He didn't waste time. "I lost the consulting contract. My savings are running low. And I need help with the alimony payments." I took a slow breath. "You're asking me to help you meet your obligation to me?" He winced. "It's temporary. Just until I get back on my feet. I figured after everything, we could be civil." "We are being civil," I said calmly. "But civil doesn't mean I'm going to carry you." His jaw tensed, but I saw the truth behind his eyes. He hadn't just come for money. He came hoping I still saw him the way I used to. The man I once waited on, bent for, and silenced myself for. "I'm sorry," he said at last. "I was selfish. And I know it's too late to fix anything, but I needed to say it." I nodded slowly. "I believe you're sorry." His eyes lifted, searching for something in my face. Maybe hope, maybe softness. But I wasn't there anymore. "And I still don't want anything from you," I added. "Not your apology. Not your guilt. We're done, Ryan. We've both moved on. You'll figure this out. Just like I had to." He sat still for a few moments, then finally rose, nodded once, and walked out into the rain. I watched him go, not with anger, but with quiet detachment. That chapter had closed. Later that evening, Robert and I walked home from the park. His tiny hand was tucked in mine, a fresh chocolate chip cookie in the other. The sky was glowing with that soft golden pink hue just before dusk, the kind that made even the sidewalks feel gentle. "Mommy," he said, looking up at me, "can we paint tomorrow?" "Of course," I smiled. "We'll make something beautiful." And as we walked, I thought about everything it took to get here. The betrayal, the silence, the nights I spent wondering if I'd ever feel like myself again. But now, I was more than myself. I was free. I had rebuilt something not just for me, but for my son. A life filled with laughter, honesty, and peace. A life where love didn't come with conditions or control. A life we created, hand in hand, step by step. The pain hadn't disappeared. It lived quietly in the corners of my story, but it no longer defined me. What defined me now was this moment. The soft sunset. The cookie crumbs on Robert's cheek. The warmth of a future I had chosen. And as we turned the corner toward the coffee shop, our home, I knew one thing for certain. I had finally, fully taken my life back.